Hi everyone, my name's Elizabeth Sullivan and I work on the National Trust's Payment for Outcomes trial in the Yorkshire Dales. The Payment for Outcomes trial is funded by the National Trust and it's looking at outcomes or results-based approaches to agri-environment payments. This is an alternative to the current way of paying agri-environment payments, which is usually based on management prescriptions. We've got 5 farms participating in the trial. 3 of them started in 2018 and a further 2 joined in 2019. The focus in this trial is on soil health, which I'll talk about in a moment, and we're also looking at pollinators. As well as the National Trust trial, we're also working with iCASP on a project on outcomes-based approaches to natural flood management, and that project is running in parallel with the National Trust trial. We're looking at soil health for several reasons. Firstly, soil isn't really covered in any other outcomes-based trials and pilot projects that are going on across the UK and Europe. Soil's clearly key to agricultural production, but it's also important in terms of lots of other ecosystem services. Soil's got a specific mention in the Agriculture Bill and in the 25-year Environment Plan. And there is now an indicator to monitor soils being developed as part of the monitoring for the 25-year plan. Soil health and flooding, there are obviously some important connections here. Some people would say that soil health is key to any approach to natural flood management. It's the foundation of a natural flood management approach. A well-structured soil plays a key role in flood attenuation. It's important for water storage. Soil's an important carbon store if it's in a good condition, so that's important for climate change mitigation. Damaged soils cost lots to the economy in terms of flood events. And then where you've also got soil erosion, you've got problems with sediment, which can increase the difficulties of flooding with properties and roads and so on. In this trial, we assess soil health in several ways. So we do an annual visual sward assessment. That's done by the farmer with help from the advisor, so usually me. We also look at the structural properties of the soil, and that's done in year 1 and year 5 of the trial. So this is a 5-year trial, and we do that in year 1 and year 5 to give the soil a bit of time to change if there are land management alterations. We do chemical testing so we can find out about pH and soil nutrients, and we follow up our visual and structural testing with soil compaction testing. If you just take note of the picture in this slide, you can see a cattle feeder there with a little bit of damage around it, and that's something I'm going to refer to in the next slide. So this is a simplified version of our visual assessment form. This is done once a year in the spring on each of the fields that have been entered into the trial. Down the left hand side you can see there is a list of features. So the farmer would walk round, do a walkover of each field and check out each of these features and award them a good score, moderate or poor. At the bottom there you can see I've highlighted supplementary feeding sites, so we saw that picture in the previous slide. To get a good score, any feeding sites would need to be rotated regularly and to there to be no evidence of damage from winter or spring feeding. If for a moderate score, you're looking at, again, these feeders should be rotated regularly with just limited poaching damage seen in the spring. And that's really what we would think about this picture that we saw in the previous slide. There is some damage, but we'd expect that to recover. If you've got a large ring feeder that's not been moved around, there's lots of really serious poaching damage, then you'd be looking at a poor score for that one. So that was the visual assessment. This is again a simplified version of our structural assessment for the soils. We would normally have the opportunity for 3 scores. So you see the scoring down the right hand side. We've got here a 5 and a -1. There is also a set of descriptions for a moderate score as well, which will get a 3. I've just included the good and poor scores to save space. So again, I've picked one out here. So we look at the aggregates in the soil, and if they crumble readily between the fingers, then that would be a 5, so that's suggesting the soil is in good condition. If the aggregates are really compact, large, difficult to pull apart, that's suggesting there is evidence of soil compaction, and that would get a poor score. And we would follow that structural assessment up with soil compaction surveys. And you can see the results here from one of our farms. The soil compaction surveys are done with penetrometer at 3 different depths, and this is the result for the 20 centimetre depth. Green dots, and these are on a 50 metre grid, by the way, so green dots indicate very limited soil compaction, so that would be a good result. Orange dots indicate some moderate compaction, and then red dots would indicate severe compaction. So there are no red dots on this particular farm. In fact, I don't think we found any on any of our farms. The orange dots in this case are in places where there are footpaths or gateways, so a bit of heavy trampling going on there. And these back up our visual and structural assessments, so that's good because it's showing our methods are working well. To date, we've got some results we can compare. As I said, we only had 3 farms started in 2018, but these are the visual scores for 2019 and the structural scores for 2018 or 2019, depending on the farm. The visual scores, the maximum is 35, and you can see that they've all done really well actually. They've all got good scores for that. Structural, again, they've all got really good results. So that means that if you translate that into payments, all 5 of the farms are being paid in the top 2 payment bands. We've got 4 payment bands, with 4 being the highest. A few more results here. These are comparisons of the visual assessments on the farms that started in 2018. And apologies, you can't quite see that 3rd farm, but you can see from the graph that all 3 farms have shown an increase over the 2 years. Obviously it's only 2 years data, but we're hoping that trend continues as they go through the trial. Farm 2 had a lower baseline score than the others, as you can see. That was mainly due to 1 or 2 of the fields having a bit of a problem with weeds, and also a feeder that had caused a bit of damage. But that had been resolved by the time we did the surveys in 2019. And just some next steps for the project. We are inputting into the National Trust's DEFRA test project. I don't know if people are aware, but DEFRA are doing various preparation projects and tests and trials for their new environmental land management scheme, so the ELMS. And the National Trust is one of those organisations that's working on a test project, so looking at a payment for outcomes approach and a whole farm approach, and the soils work that we've been doing has been included in that project. The iCASP project that I mentioned at the beginning, we're looking at a whole range of interventions for natural flood management in that project, and soil management is a key one. It's turned out it's a good intervention because it's, as we can see, there's easy ways to measure it and lots of different approaches to measuring soil health, and it's also a fundamental part of natural flood management. The payment for outcomes soil health option, which is what I've been talking about today, that continues until December 2022, at which point we'll write a formal report. But apart from that formal report, we've also been sharing our findings and experiences widely throughout the trial with farmers, not just ones in the trial, but other farmers as well, practitioners and policymakers. And we're always keen to share the experiences of the trial. And so I'll be happy to answer any questions in the Q&A later. Thank you very much.